The C in iPhone 5C stands for croc, as in the shoe, at least according to some Pocketnow editors. But what does the S in 5S stand for? We'll speculate on that. And speaking of letters and numbers, we'll get caught up in just how we feel about the LG G2 and the Nokia Lumia 1520 and so much more on episode 061 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast from Pocketnow, where we discuss smartphones, tablets, and the state of mobile technology in 2013. I'm your host, Michael Fisher, editorial director at Pocketnow, and today I'm joined by multimedia manager and chief football expert Jaime Rivera down in Honduras. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Hello, sir, and I'm surprised you're able to always nail that intro on the first clip.
You know, I almost choked on my coffee while I was doing it, and I'm sure it sounds like it. But thank you, I appreciate it. And we're also joined by the man who can't catch a break this week, Microsoft fans' own punching bag, contributing editor Adam Dowd. Hello to you over there in the middle of our great nation.
Hello to you, and I'm impressed that you said football and not soccer. So.
I did. It was important to me that I pay the proper amount of respect to a sport I pay no attention to, but which the world does. And I've been watching a lot of Pocketnow Daily this week, so I've seen a lot of Pocketnow. I've seen a lot of Jaime's shirts, and I'm like, yeah, you know, everyone else is paying attention to this soccer thing, so I will call it football as is proper. How's your team doing, Jaime?
Do you know the United States team is already? They're pretty much classified to the World Cup.
I pretty much forgot that the U.S. had a soccer team.
They're playing. They're playing really well.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. Because normally I feel like I don't hear about the U.S.'s lesser-known sports teams for a reason, where it's like, oh, we're doing really poorly in like rowing or whatever.
Well, actually, the United States is more known for their soccer team than they are for football or baseball. Trust me.
What you mean? Oh, you mean in a global scheme?
On a global scheme, yeah, they play. They play. Actually, this team plays really well in comparison to other teams in previous years.
Well, and speaking of that, before I get out of my depth, we're going to stop talking about sports because I know nothing about anything. But I do want to say that as we talk about these global affairs, it is really, really nice to be home. This is our first podcast since the International Funkausstellung in Berlin, better known as IFA. Tony and I last podcasted from a hotel room poised over an unlikely and unstable microphone stand. Did you guys see that picture?
Oh,
I didn't see the picture, but in my head, I saw you and Tony with a bottle of Jack Daniels, each smoking cigarettes, hunched over, kind of like 1960s FBI style.
Oh, yeah, with like a single dangling exposed light bulb. And we're both wearing like sweaty tank tops and just smoking. Yeah. Well, it's, close to it. I mean, half of us were chain smoking. And we were not drinking Jack, but Tony did expose me to some Romanian...
Palinka.
No, it wasn't Palinka this time. Although I did, I do have some more. He was nice enough to bring that. It was like some kind of sherry or something like that. It was like an aperitif. Anyway, It was lovely. We were not drunk as many commenters. Some commenters thought we were in fact just exhausted. But the point is, now I'm back in my sound booth in America. Jaime is in Honduras. Adam is in the center of America instead of the coastal seaboard. And everything is where it should be. Tony's back in Romania. He's not on the podcast today. And you guys are welcome to ask me any questions about IFA that you would like. I'm talking to you guys on the air with me and listeners. And listeners, if you want to check out all of our IFA coverage, which includes a whole bunch of smartphones and tablets, seriously, a whole lot, you can check it out at the clumsily named pocketnow.com/tag/IFA-2013, a link which we'll put in the description below.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's good because you lost me after Pocketnow.
Just go to http:// Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, C:// Okay, I've only got one question. You are not a fan of tacky materials, so
no.
How is that Note 3 for you? I sadly, I couldn't get like the real decision. Is Michael Fisher really liking that phone?
So the Note 3, you mean tacky in the sense of like style?
Well,
right?
the back is not real leather.
No, it's not. It's not real leather. But you know what? I will say this. I had to be told that it wasn't real leather. Not that I actively thought that Samsung was going to use real leather on one of its most popular smartphones. I mean, that would be very, very unpopular with a large swath of the population who don't eat meat or don't believe in, using real leather on stuff. And I'm fine with that, but I just didn't think about it. And the reason I didn't think about it was because it felt good enough to me that my brain didn't even go there. I was like, oh yeah, okay, leather, whatever. So whatever it is, I unfortunately don't know what it actually is. I don't know if it's technically pleather or if it's just some kind of weird synthetic. But it feels great. And the stitching, you're either going to like it or not. I feel like this is the BlackBerry Bold 9000 moment for Samsung.
I was about to say, and I love the Bold 9000.
Yeah.
So, I guess that in the past for me, the Galaxy Note, the first iteration was like, oh God, I can't even see that thing. Then the Note 2 kind of grew on me after your review. But, the Note 3 is like the first Galaxy Note that I see, and I'm like, oh, okay, I want that.
Yeah.
I want that.
So, I mean, it's cool. I'm glad you say that because I haven't heard other people's impressions of it too much, or I haven't had the time to read them. And, they've redone the rail around the side. They've made it Anton was smart enough to call this out on last week's podcast, I think. He said the kind of edge detailing on the bezel, or not the bezel, but the mid plate, the chrome bit, all that it's meant to resemble pages of a notebook. And of course it is. So you have all these parallel lines in there, and to me it looked like a 1950s stylistic choice on like the side of a pencil sharpener or something. But, it really looks good. And
interesting.
Yeah. I'm just so glad to see Hyperglaze gone on the Note 3. We don't know what they're going to do on the Galaxy S5 and the rest of their devices, but it's cool. I understand that some people will not like the pleather, but I like it. It feels good. It's got stitching. I think it's cool.
I love it.
I'm thinking Galaxy S5. Stay with me here, guys. Feathers. Right?
What if it was
soft touch? What
if it's like waterproof. What if it's like velour and like you rub it one way and it's one color, you rub it the other way, it's a different color?
Oh, now you're into the sex.
It just reminds me of that scene in Coming to America where King Jaffe Joffer arrives to the barber shop, and so the guy comes up and touches the line on his chest and is like, "Wow, is that velvet?" You remember that scene?
No, you've made me want to rewatch Coming to America now. Oh, that was Eddie Murphy, right?
Yes, it was actually Eddie Murphy. Yeah.
When Eddie Murphy was funny.
Eddie Murphy and
yeah. I wish he still did funny movies. So anyway, that's the story in the Note 3, and we can talk more about IFA as we roll on. But that's not that was the news of last week. It will be the news again as we are going to get review units of that, the Galaxy Gear, and everything else we saw at IFA. But we have bigger news this week, and we're going to kick things off with iOS. Probably for the first time in the weeklies in the last 4 months of the Pocketnow Weekly, I would say. I think the last time iOS was first probably was when the last iPads dropped.
Right. It's not like anything big happened, so.
Right. Ooh. Well, so we had a collaborative piece, and I want to thank Jaime Rivera for putting up with my obstinate ways. Whenever a collaborative piece rolls around and I see it in my inbox, I'm like, ugh. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but
I thought I was alone on that.
Oh, you too?
Yeah, I do.
But the readers actually like them, and the comment threads are big. And we're going to rework the collaborative template a little bit because it's not very pretty right now, and we're going to do something about that. But we had a piece where we all weighed in, except for me, with our thoughts on the brand new iPhone 5S and iPhone 5C, and we have Jaime Rivera on the show today for a very specific reason. He is Pocketnow's resident iOS champion. We have Adam Dowd here on the show because he is Pocketnow's resident Windows Phone champion alongside Adam Lane.
An iOS hater.
An iOS hater.
Come on, get the creds out there.
Right. But not really. But, so we have a little balanced perspective, and as usual, I'm the control rod here. So, Jaime, I want you to walk us through your thoughts of what Apple led us through earlier this week. And I will remind our readers also that there's a live broadcast recording you can watch of all of us getting this news live on the air, which is tagged under the iOS tab on Pocket Now. But Jaime, your thoughts on the 5S and the 5C?
I guess the 5S, it's like I was actually watching your review of the Galaxy S4 a couple of days ago because I was doing the script for the After the Buzz that I'm working on.
Okay.
The iPhone 5S is like the Galaxy S4 for the Galaxy S3. It's an iterative improvement. You look at the phone and it's really hard to tell any differences. But, the little things that they changed for me, particularly in my usage scenario, are substantial. That fingerprint thing, I'm the type of guy that does use passwords. You don't, for example. Mm-hmm. So for you, that is not important. For me, it is. I live in a country where theft is very common. And your phone continuously becomes your wallet in so many ways. Mm-hmm. I keep all my credit card information on my phone. I keep all my personal information on my phone. All my contacts, my communications with everybody is on my phone. And definitely I want to keep everything as private as I can in the case of theft. And the fact that I don't have to be hiding my phone to hide the password from my kids, for example, because they could just sneak up on you and play with Angry Birds or stuff. The fact that they finally figured out the fingerprint scanner. It's like we've had it for years. I used to have it in IBM computers years ago, and it worked kind of well. Motorola took a stab at it. You remember those HP Pocket PCs from years ago? They took a stab at it. The iPad 55, I think it was.
Did they really have those?
Yeah, years ago. It's been a while, and nobody has really gotten it right. And I'm just happy that somebody finally did. For me, the 5S is not really about the 5S, but it's the fact that now everybody's going to start doing it right. Finally.
So hopefully that's the case.
Hopefully,
yeah.
I was going to say let's hedge our bets a little bit. We haven't actually seen this in practice yet, so.
And it is tough, but I understand why Jaime would put it that way because when Apple has something ready for release, generally it's ready for prime time and it's fully cooked.
Apple is always late to the game. That they either leapfrog or they're late. That's just the way they are.
Right.
And I guess I'm just disappointed at the whole idea of the camera. It's like, oh, we've got a new technology of a flash, and I'm like, man, you tell that to a photographer, and he's going to gag you.
Oh, why? Because it's not necessarily new?
Because there's no optical image stabilization in this day and age, and the flash is not a solution for people,
Right, but the flash has been a problem point. I want to say I got excited when they announced the flash because I hate the flash. I never use it because it destroys photos when I use it. Because it just washes you out. But a flash that doesn't, white out your whole foreground will be nice.
Yeah, but the problem is, for example, those photos that you have of your review of the HTC One, where you're taking a photo of the depth of that subway. Okay, you can't do that with a flash, for example.
Right. No, that has to be a long exposure with OIS.
Exactly. So I guess what I'm saying is the flash is, I was expecting Apple to at least figure that one out, to not be late to optical image stabilization. That's my only disappointment with the 5S. I love the fingerprint scanner. I've been reading so many articles of the 64-bit processor and what it means to the future of applications. The only thing I'm going to tell you is I'm sadly not Joe Levi, so I still don't really know how great this is going to be until I see it in practice. Right. Sadly, I come from the time where I remember 64 bits coming to PCs, and it was chaos at the beginning.
It was. I remember that too. And you know what? I didn't even understand it back then. And unfortunately, I didn't have enough foresight to research it then, so I would know what I was talking about now. Because it was funny when the live broadcast just completely derailed when all of us were like, "Wait, we don't know what we're talking about."
Yeah, but okay. So the fingerprint scanner I like. The 64-bit I'd like to see. In the case of the camera, is another thing where I'm like, okay, let's wait for the review unit. Most likely, Brandon's going to get it, and he's going to tell us if he likes it or not. That's going to be the point. Now, in the case of the iPhone 5C, gentlemen and ladies, listeners,
You be careful. One man on this show stayed up until 3 a.m. to order that 5C last night.
You stay up until 3 a.m. drinking Dunkin' Donuts coffee. You make no sacrifice for that.
No, that's not true. I was so comfortable on my couch. I was falling asleep to Family Guy after a gross pizza. Like, that's what was happening in my life, and it was so nice. And then my alarm went off, and it was freaking 2:50. And I was like, oh, come on, man. And then I had to deal with the Apple Store. Click, all right, blah, blah, blah. I'll talk about that in a second. Tell us about your thoughts on the 5C that I have committed to like.
Okay, so there is nothing different between the 5C and the iPhone 5.
There are some differences. The battery's bigger.
The battery's bigger. What else?
It's a pretty color.
Right. Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is this. Apple is getting slammed right now in the stock market. And the reason why is because they were being pushed to provide a budget alternative to the iPhone. And so, here comes Tim Cook and is saying, oh, we've got a new strategy now where we're not going to be leaving the old phone and dropping $100 on the price. What we're going to be doing is we're going to bring a whole new phone. And so it makes you wonder, okay, so, they would have, they switched the materials to plastic, but then it's the same iPhone 5, only with different materials. And they pretty much did what they would have done other years. They just dropped the price tag by $100. And so they're getting slammed in the stock market because this is not a budget iPhone. It's just another iteration of the iPhone 5. Nothing has really changed. It's like if they would have left the 5. It's like if you have an iPhone 5 right now, keep it.
Yeah,
keep it. There is no point to upgrade.
All right, but if we can be a little more forward-looking, what Apple has done, this is the first time in Apple's history with the iPhone that they have taken the iPhone and they have split it. They've split the family into a high-end version and a lower-end version. No longer is the high-end version automatically going to become next year's low-end, even though I'm sure that'll persist to some degree. Now they have two product families. Now this gives them the room now next year to take the higher end and go, like, here's a bigger one, or here's whatever, and then here's the 5CS or whatever.
Okay, but that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. See, that's what they said on the keynote, but they didn't really do it. The iPhone 5C is just the 5. Only with a plastic, it's the iPhone 5 with a case.
Sure, but
I knew exactly where you were going with that, Jaime. So even as you were getting ready to say it.
It's the iPhone 5 with a case.
But isn't the case? Shouldn't we not marginalize the case, considering how much customization has entered the market since the last iPhone launched? I mean, shouldn't we treat the case as important, even though that sounds stupid to treat a plastic polycarbonate colored case as important?
I guess that the point that I'm trying to make is this: the iPhone 5C would have mattered if it would have cost $300, or $350, $400.
Your beef is the high cost here.
But my point is that they have not really innovated in any way with this phone, in favor of the masses. They simply changed the backing of an already existing phone, and they kept the same price scheme that they had for the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. So they're not really changing anything, That's my point. I mean, if they would have launched this phone with a plastic back, and that what's the difference between giving me an iPhone 5 with anodized aluminum in different colors than to give me an iPhone 5C with a plastic back in different colors? Because that's pretty much what they did. And they're charging me just as if they would have downgraded the iPhone 5 into the entry-level model. The second entry-level model, I guess. I guess my point is that the reason why Apple is being slammed in the stock market is because this phone is just a camouflaged way of doing the same thing. They haven't changed anything. If the iPhone 5C would have been $100 less, or if it would have brought a different pricing strategy to pull in teenagers or something, I mean, this looks like another Microsoft Ken, like another product where they're going to have to pay the full data plan, and just for $100 more, you can get the full iPhone 5S. So I do feel, honestly, sorry, but I feel that this phone is going to flop.
You feel the 5C is going to flop? I mean,
I do.
If it were any other company, I would agree with you.
I do. And the only reason why we're not going to know this, why are we not going to know that this phone is going to flop, is because Apple sadly calls their iPhone sales as a whole, meaning we don't know how many. They don't
break it down between 5S and 5C.
They don't break it down. We don't know how many iPad minis were sold. We don't know how many iPhone. And we just have no way of knowing. So sadly, we won't know if the phone flops or not.
Well, you'll be able to get a feel for it, though. You'll be able to keep your finger on the pulse of through anecdotal evidence. It's like, well, what do I see on the train?
And this is not.
I know that's crappy data, but it's something at least.
Yeah.
So and you know what? It's funny. I might want to walk the line at the Boylston Street Apple store next week and just be like, what are you buying? Which one are you getting? Because they're both launching on the 20th, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, we have a Windows Phone guy on the podcast. We want to hear some alternate perspectives here. And Adam Dowd, I will say before I let you talk about the iPhone, Adam Dowd is too polite for the Pocketnow Weekly. Just jump in. Just this is the show that Taylor Martin co-hosts on all the time. Yeah. You know this, right? So you just steamroll over it.
There's a reason why. There's a reason why that is.
I know. Taylor IM'd me before the show. He was like, "Enjoy the podcast without me, jerk." And I was like, "Yeah, we will. It'll be nice to have a transition." position for once.
Seriously.
He IM'd me. I told him I'd hook you up with a couple of Segway busters.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us, Adam Dowd wrote a piece called "A Windows Phone Fan's View of the New iPhone," and this was basically a. I would probably say you panned it. You know, so tell us, Adam, in fewer words than you used in the piece, why you are not going to be standing in line next Friday, and why that is.
Well, well, as you said in the intro, I am a kind of an Apple hater. I've never liked Apple. I've never liked the whole, buy a $200 MP3 player and get the exact same thing for what a $35 MP3 player will get. And I don't like that. I just never have, never will. So I will not be standing in line. Although I will admit, I was watching Taylor's iOS 7 walkthrough, and there were some intriguing things there that made me kind of like, but I'm still not there.
I noticed that. Now, I was looking at your 5S and 5C, our collaborative piece there, and you were say, sometime in the future it may not be completely crazy for me to sport an iPhone as a daily driver, says Adam Dowd. And then your universe imploded on you.
My hand spontaneously combusted, yes.
Right.
So,
You're a flip-flopper, Adam Dowd. Choose a side. No,
I am a flip-flopper. I'm very much a fence rider. So, but what it boils down to is, from a Windows Phone perspective, there was nothing about the iPhone that made me say, "Oh, I need to go get an iPhone." Screw this iPhone or this Windows Phone stuff. So, it's just. I kind of ran down the key features. The 64-bit chip does nothing for me. The fingerprint scanning does nothing for me. The camera, compared to the 1020, does nothing for me. So pretty much where I am is I'm still just kind of waiting for Apple to blow me away, and they have yet to do that. And, further, what Apple does is not going to affect Windows Phone a lick. Windows Phone is really too small for them to be concerned with what competitors are doing. Windows Phone is small enough where they're going to make or break themselves. So there was nothing about the iPhone announcement that made me think, oh, yay, Windows Phone is going to charge, or there was nothing that says, oh, no, we're screwed. So it was just, Windows Phone is standing on its own right now, and it determines its own fate. So that was kind of my view.
Well, yeah, but that's true. But Windows Phone, just like any other platform, takes note of what the competition is doing and appropriates what it needs to and does it in its own version. So you don't see any kind of thing we might see in, GDR4 or Windows Phone, 8, making up things. But,
I still just want Amber.
Okay.
I've got my poor AT&T Lumia 920 that still is amberless.
Thank you, carriers.
So, yeah.
All right. So
another compelling reason to get an iPhone.
Ooh. So
September 18th, everybody's going to get iOS 7. That's just the way it is.
We've mentioned this a couple times now, and the link is in the rundown as usual, folks. The iOS 7 Goldmaster is it's officially out, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And Taylor Martin, that's why Taylor Martin was able to do that walkthrough. Sorry, guys, it's the end of the week, and I'm a little confused in the head, but Taylor Martin did this great video walkthrough of, hey, here's what iOS 7 looks like now that it's out of beta. Here's the changes that have taken place. Here's what customers are going to be seeing on their iPhones.
Yeah.
And I watched this video right before we came on the air, and I tweeted that I was giggling like a schoolgirl watching it. And not in derision, but in excitement. Because, as listeners know, because I've said it 40 million times, I haven't had an iPhone since 2008. So coming back to iOS after that stretch of time is filling me with a lot of excitement, particularly because I like a lot of what I see in iOS 7.
That's going to be huge for you, having taken such a long layoff.
Exactly. And as it relates to you, Adam, having myself spent so much time with Windows Phone. Because iOS 7... maybe it's the flattened elements, maybe it's the pronounced use of color. There's a lot of factors to it, but it reminds me a lot of Windows Phone in its simplicity, particularly at the lock screen. If you just kind of hop on over to the unlock keypad, I'm like, oh yeah, well those aren't squares, they're circles, but it's like, oh yeah, hey Metro, what's up?
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm excited in that sense because it was always the Chrome that kept me annoyed about iOS. So I'm very excited to look at it from that perspective. I'm excited to see it from the perspective of somebody who's been away for a long time. But for an old guard person like you, Jaime, and I know we've talked about before, but now we have the Goldmaster, what are your feelings about this new flavor of iOS?
So I've been using the beta and now the Gold Master since day one.
Right.
Every single beta since it's been launched.
Right, and that's why I ask, because you've been using it consistently, but you also spent a whole lot of time with the old chromed up version.
Yeah, I like it. It's visually pleasing to me. At first, it was hard to get used to the contrast, and because the greens are like really green, and,
yeah,
and then the reds are like really red. But there's a lot of genius. I told this we had this call with Brandon yesterday, and I'm like, man, sometimes I feel like if Apple somehow discovered who invented HTC Sense 5 and hired the guy secretly. Or within that whole HTC and Apple settlement, they kind of came to an agreement of collaboration or something, because I've been using HTC Sense 5 for like 3 weeks on the HTC One X. And, I see a lot of things are very similar. Like the weather application is like a strict copy of HTC Sense. The Photos application, that whole stacking of photos with events and everything, that's Sense 5. The typography looks a lot like Sense 5. But then again, I like it. I feel that it was a great enhancement. And, it's not, a lot of people are like, oh, this is just lipstick on a pig. And, well, it wasn't really a pig. It just needed a revamp.
It would be my argument that it was indeed a pig, but that pig has been not just lipstick has not just been put on it, but we've gone with the dress.
Okay,
and
so
the hat. And,
so for example,
and the brooch, if you will.
So for example, is it more efficient? No. Is it faster? No. But iOS 6 wasn't slow.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't slow. So I guess that's the thing. What could Apple enhance from iOS that wasn't aesthetics and that wasn't, how practical it was? Because for me, Control Center is like, oh God, why did it take these people so long? A simple swipe
Control Center is the swipe up from the bottom, and you get those toggles, like the Wi-Fi toggles.
And you get the toggles. I guess I've written like 6 editorials on this. It's like, what are you going to do this?
And it's finally there. And not only is it there, Jaime, but it's not implemented in the Android way, which is increasingly stupid as you get higher screen sizes and you continue to have to swipe down from the top, which is dumb because for one-handed usability. Swiping up from the bottom makes all the sense in the world. And I will mention this because the commenters will. Yes, you can get custom ROMs that do this. My friend Chris Larson is running a Droid DNA with a custom ROM where he can swipe up from the clock. Well, people not on this podcast, but a lot of people.
Listen.
No, but the point is, I've seen it. I've seen it implemented well in a custom ROM on Android. I just wish Android as a whole would undertake this. But you know what? We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about iOS 7, and the Control Center coming up from the bottom is so incredibly logical. I'm in love with it before I've even used it.
Yeah, no. I guess that, like for example, there are some applications that are already being updated to iOS 7. Like, for example, there's this temperature application that I use that I really like because it gives me a toggle for the information of the temperature. And, for example, in the past, and you have to deal with this with Windows Phone and you have to deal with this with Android, where you launch an application and you have to wait for it to refresh. And with iOS now, it notices which are the applications that you use more, and it'll automatically update it in the background if that's one of the applications that you use the most. So that's like, for example, oh wow, I've hated this ever since I had to move away from Windows Mobile, because in Windows Mobile you didn't have that problem. The application would trigger the update. It wasn't a server; it was the app that was doing it.
Right.
Okay. And so for me, so these are things that all operating systems struggle with, and that iOS is finally figuring this out. Simple things like that. Siri is getting better. So again, if you're expecting this to make the iPhone better than it was, no. But again, I liked iOS.
I really think it does make the iPhone better than it was.
It's just visually better.
It's usability better. We just spent 10 minutes talking about the control center. Plus, we've got the cards, and I know Adam Dowd will appreciate the card-based multitasking.
Yeah.
What's card-based multitasking?
Oh, it's this thing that they got introduced by this old company.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You see it on Windows Phone every day.
Oh, yeah, but on Windows Phone, infuriatingly, you can't throw the cards away.
You can't toss them away. Oh.
Yeah.
So,
and
actually,
in iOS, you can do that.
I'm gonna stomp on here something really quick. I just saw something come from Stephen Shank on my Twitter feed saying HP is going to make a Windows Phone.
What?
Isn't that great?
Wait, is that true?
I just saw it was just on the Twitter feed. It's probably on the Pocketnow homepage. I'm looking at it right now.
I'm looking at it right now as well. Let's see. Windows Phone. HP rumored to produce Windows Phone handset.
Rumored, excuse me.
All right. So this is breaking news. I love this. I love Friday afternoon late breaking news. And by the way, I should have announced this at the top. Listeners, we're going to try this Friday thing for the weekly from now on because I like it better. And rumors very light on specifics, but supposedly a trusted source indicates HP's been working on a new smartphone for a while now, and it looks like it's going to be a Windows Phone 8 model.
Listen, they've been working on it since 2010. But anyway.
Listen, this makes all kinds of sense, but I doubt they are going to impress me considering what they've done in their tablet sector. But we'll see. We'll see. Anyway.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stop.
No,
Go
dude,
ahead.
that was awesome. Thank you for that heads up. So there's a lot to talk about here. I want to ask about one more thing before we move on to the final topic of iOS 7. Part of my wonderment and excitement at watching Taylor's walkthrough was seeing the parallax wallpaper effect in iOS 7, which is one of the most useless pieces of cruft in the whole thing. But it looks amazing on video. How does it look in person, Jaime? Because it makes it's not just that the wallpaper is moving with your motion, which we've seen on Android since 2010. It's that the icons appear to be hovering on a different layer than the background. Right?
Yeah, everything is layered, and I like that mentality where everything is like logical. You know that that the control center is laying on top of something, and it tries to give you that perspective. And in the case of the parallax, I guess what I like about it the most is that it works with anything you put on it. Meaning, it doesn't have to be an Apple wallpaper. Like for example, moving wallpapers on Android have to be moving wallpapers for them to work. And there are certain things that just don't happen unless the wallpaper supports it or stuff like that. Whereas here, it could be a photo of you and your girlfriend or whatever, and the parallax will work. And I like that. I like that. It's a very it's a very simplistic, and some people will call it dumb visual effect, but it just gives the phone this
well, it's an added dimension, right?
It's a little detail. I mean,
it's a little detail. Yeah, people get caught up in the details. That is an awesome
molding
point.
of the cell phone world. So.
Yeah,
the what of the cell phone world?
The crown molding.
Oh,
so when you go into an old building and they have the wood thing going around the top of the wall by the ceiling.
So is it like where the wall meets the ceiling? Is that what the molding you're talking about?
There's a molding there. So it's kind of a big deal in carpentry. So
really,
yeah.
Are you a carpenter, Adam Duck?
My father was, and
so was
you
my
pick
father.
things up.
Yeah, cool.
So was Jesus.
Hey, learning all kinds of things on the Pocketnow Weekly this month. So before we move entirely out of iOS, I want to spring to the defense of something that both of you have maligned savagely on the show today. And, I've got a bone to pick with the both of you. I think the fingerprint scanner's cool.
I love it.
So you love it?
I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Wait, you just talked about how useless it is. It doesn't do anything for you.
No. I was the one that said that I love it. For me,
that's right. I'm sorry. It was Adam.
That single feature alone is enough for me to buy an iPhone 5S.
I think you just dismissed it in terms of like the broad appeal. But listen, that thing excites me more than anything else about the 5S.
It's just going to depend on how it works. I mean,
do you use a lock code, Adam?
I do. No, I do not.
Neither do I. I do not. And the reason I don't is because that is the last thing I want to do is put this added step every single time I unlock my phone of either doing a gesture or doing a lock code or doing a facial recognition or something like that.
Right.
The thing that is so compelling about the fingerprint scanner is that if it works as advertised, it's just...
every time you want to buy an app, all you do is put your fingerprint.
Right. Brilliant.
I mean, just think about it. In the case of security, I mean, what better than your fingerprint? There's nothing else is infallible. Your password could be seen by somebody else. Yeah. It is just so easy. No security system is better than your fingerprint. And for me, for that to become a standard in smartphones, because that's the way it's going to be. Next year, the Galaxy S5 is going to bring a fingerprint scanner. You can bet on it. It's
I don't
going
know
to happen.
how they would implement that though? Because I mean, the home button makes perfect sense to put a fingerprint button, to put a fingerprint scanner there, because your finger is going to be touching it anyway, and it's right there, it's front and center on the phone. I don't know where a Galaxy S4 would put a fingerprint scanner.
They'll give you a bigger home button. That's what they'll do.
That's probably what they do, because we know they love their home button.
But that's not going away.
Yeah.
So that's the real genius here. And I can already, despite the fact that we've mentioned this before, I can already see the comments streaming in. It's like, Apple wasn't the first. But yeah, we had it on the Atrix on the back, and it was part of the power standby key from Motorola's first Atrix.
It was terrible.
And it didn't work very well at all, right?
It was terrible. I mean, that's my problem. I mean, how can you rely your security on a product that you can't guarantee will always work? It's like, Apple still has Siri on beta, for example. They're still smart enough to tell you that it's not finished.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So I
approach
for Gmail, but it's true. I mean, how can you sell me a phone and boast about the fingerprint scanner if it's not going to work all the time?
Right. What I'm curious to see is how it's going to work in adverse conditions. How's it going to work when it's raining? How's it going to work when your hands are dirty? How's it going to work?
Listen, and this is funny. People were making this comment. They were like, "It's not going to work with my glove," and I'm like, "Well." In the past, for you to type in the password to your iPhone, you had to take your gloves off anyways.
Well, I mean, I'm going from...
It's like if your hands were wet, you still had to dry them out to touch the screen. So why are you trying to make a point about this? Your behavior pattern is still gonna continue. This is not a Galaxy S4 Active. It's an iPhone.
I get it, but Jaime, I'm a geocacher. My hands are rarely clean.
Yes.
So I just, I'm out in the woods. I'm, digging through grass and leaves looking for stupid ammo boxes. And, I'm a dirty, dirty boy. And I need to be spanked. Wait, what just happened?
Dear God. Where have we gone?
Oh, my God.
Average listener count just plummeted. 2,500. 2,000. Okay, so we have divergent opinions. Tool time.
I guess I just want to make this point clear.
Make it clear.
Nothing is going to change about your usage. You're getting an enhancement. In the past, what you had is a button. That the button will still work. Meaning, if you have your gloves on and you push it, the button will still work. So the only difference is you're not going to be able to unlock your phone or turn off the fingerprint and set it to your password. You're still going to have to take your gloves off because there is no high sensitivity on the iPhone.
And we've got that. And we are going to circle back to this in listener mail, by the way. So you will have an opportunity to opine further.
There never was, and over 50% of the population in the United States is carrying an iPhone right now, and they've learned to live with it.
That's a great marketing slogan. Buy an iPhone and live with it.
Live with it. Deal with it. .jpeg. All right.
For example,
I want to talk about the component, okay? Because this is important because the fingerprint scanner, we're never going to get a consensus on this until there's millions of them on the market, and finally people either deal with it .png or they return them all, right? So
that's Tumblr.com.
Right. So we'll talk more about this in the future. But the problem is right now it appears to be giving Apple some serious trouble in meeting demand. And that's projected demand at this point, I think. But the iPhone 5S fingerprint scanner yield, meaning the capacity of the companies to build it, is, according to one analyst, terrible.
I'm going to say this today. I'm going to say this. Apple is. They did it last year with the iPhone 5.
With what?
They're trying to create buzz in order for the demand to skyrocket.
So you think this is bogus?
I think this is bogus. I feel that Apple manipulates the system for the stock market to like them. They're out of stock. So out of stock means they've sold a ton of phones, and that makes your stock price skyrocket.
Well, no, it's actually quite the opposite. The analyst is saying that because they're going to be unable to meet demand, their stock price is going down. And to address your other point, I saw that same comment. They're just trying to create demand. When has Apple ever had to create demand for an iPhone?
I'll give you a clear example. Why is there no pre-order for the 5S? Why? Their stock price is 50% down right now, and what they need is for people to plummet those stores, for the media to go crazy, for CNN to report on it, for the Wall Street Journal to report on it, so that investors are happy that people still want to buy an iPhone.
Okay, so you're saying it's purely a tactical push.
It's a tactical push. That's my opinion.
Okay, now, I've delved as far into the boiler room as I can go on this one. So,
yeah. So I mean, the deal is that they're saying that the Foxconn or whoever is only going to build between 5 and 10 million 5S units this quarter, which will not at all meet the projected demand. I don't think so. I guess we will have to see what happens here. But I guess my question is, assuming this is true, are the added benefits that the fingerprint scanner brings worth the trouble, essentially?
Well, in my particular case, if you want to sell your iPhone 5, this is the time. So yeah, if you don't sell your phone now on eBay, it's going to be worth a lot less next week. So that's the smartest. It's the smartest thing to get rid of it now and get the 5S. So yeah, that's like the only compelling reason why. Yeah, you want to get the latest and greatest, and you want to get some good gravy over your current device. This is the right time to sell it. And to probably live with a Nokia 33-something for, one of those old dumb phones while your phone arrives. But yeah, I guess that's the only reason why it's compelling for people to go crazy over it now. Right. Because that's it. I don't know how many. The thing is, I think they're starting to sell this phone on day one in China. That's
a big deal, and we should have talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's going to make the phone disappear on day one. The shipments are not even going to leave the factory.
Right.
They're just going to go pick them up there. And by the way, I'm sorry, I'm killing your segue, but Adam Dowd,
it's just in my brain. It didn't even make it to my mouth yet. You're going the bonus round on segue.
I know. I'm going to ask you one little thing about that Nokia feature of the high sensitivity on the display. Speaking of the fingerprint scanner,
super sensitive touch.
Tell me something. That super sensitive touch is automatic, or you have to set it?
As far as I know, it's automatic because I have never set it.
You can set the sensitivity level to.
You can change it. Yeah.
Okay, so see that's
all right,
really,
now I'm curious.
That's really my problem. That's my problem with these products. It's it's cool to have, but if you have to be setting it, then what's the point?
Well, because you want to be setting it in different conditions. You're like, if you're the type of person who hovers his thumb uncertainly over the screen when you're browsing, you're like, I don't know where to go. You don't want that hover to trigger a link. You want to be able to customize a little bit. Windows Phone fell into the trap of not allowing enough customization. So in a lot of Windows Phone, there's just, you go into settings and it's like, wow, I can't really manipulate much of this. And thankfully, Nokia kind of came to the rescue with some stuff in the Amber update to allow.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, going back to that comment that we've been getting about the iPhone not being usable with a glove or anything.
I do not want to go back there. I mean, I'm so tired of this stupid argument. Let's talk about something else. All right.
Pretty sure we rolled up the shutters on that particular storefront.
I am done. I'm so done with that. But I do want to continue touching on fingerprints as we move into Android, and we'll get back to iOS on our next week's show, and also I'll be unboxing my 5C on Friday, and I'm really jazzed. So anyway,
what color did you get?
I got blue. When I meant to get a green case for the blue phone, but instead I was so exhausted that I got a blue case for the blue phone. So I'm going to be the most boring iPhone 5C carrier ever.
You're serious?
I didn't mean. I was tired.
You're going to be carrying a blue phone, and everyone's going to know, oh, he got the cheap one.
No, look at that. Oh, you. What's
this
the matter?
Is class
separation. The extra Benjamin,
this is Brave
bro?
New World right now.
Right.
This is what's happening.
But what's nice is that, thankfully, you do not have to be on iOS to experience the wonders of a fingerprint scanner, if any of these leaks are going to be believed. We're talking about Android now. We are changing up the links in the rundown just a little bit, and we're talking about the HTC One Max. The branding has leaked for it. Supposedly. We know that it's going to be called the Max with one X, which makes sense because they don't want to get in trouble with Motorola. It has popped up in some test photos, and this has been consistent throughout, I think, all of the HTC One Max leaks. there is a big old square sitting beneath the big old camera lens on this big, big phone. And that square is what everyone believes to be, or many people at least, a fingerprint scanner.
In a lovely placement.
Lovely placement. Now, we were just saying that the fingerprint scanner as the power standby button didn't really work on the Motorola Atrix, and the home button is kind of the perfect place for it on the iPhone 5S. But this one is right below the camera lens on the back, coincidentally, in the same location as the volume buttons and power standby button on the LG G2, which I have right here and which we'll talk about in a second, and also where the convenient little dimple is on the back of the Motorola X. It is a very natural place for your finger to go when you're using a phone. Is this, guys, a sensible location?
I think a fingerprint scanner on an HTC is going to be a brilliant idea, unlike the iPhone. No, I'm kidding.
I was just going to say, are you just being a troll? Is that what's going on?
No, actually, I'm just wondering how many dirty camera lenses we're going to have because people are going to miss.
You nailed it. You nailed it. You nailed it. You're
going to need a lot of ultra pixels to make up for the fingerprint blurs on the that you're getting on your photos there.
Right. So, Jaime, you agree with that?
Oh yeah, that's for me. It's like it's a good placement. Sadly, the camera is exactly just on top of it, so that's going to be nice.
It's brilliant in its stupidity.
Yep.
Well, maybe we're going to see something done with texture here. It is a square as opposed to a circle. Maybe the corners will be definable by your fingers and you'll be able to tell the difference. I have not had any trouble on the LG G2 with differentiating the lens from the buttons, but that's because the power standby has a little hump on the back. And, of course, the Motorola X dimple is a dimple instead of the lens. So maybe HTC will do something similar, but I'm curious as to your guys' thoughts on the implementation on the software side. I mean, will this be a custom build of Sense that disallows an unlock unless your finger is on that little square, do you think? Will the lock screen implementation not even be used? Will they use it for something else?
Well, I do know that the Sense lock function is very unique to Sense, up to the point where there's this application that I have that's called the delay lock, where it's always like, if you have an HTC phone, this is not going to work.
Oh.
Yeah. And so go ahead, Adam.
It's going to be awkward as hell if you're going to be using that for a lock screen. I guess maybe if you're using your index finger, but when I pick up my phone, I don't really naturally put any fingers anywhere close to the camera. So
really? So what do you do, like bear claw it? Like do you hold the thing like a beer can?
I usually use tweezers.
Okay. No.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I just pick up a phone and I palm it. It's what I do. So I mean, I don't see how that's going to work for a lock screen, but I've been wrong before, as many Twitter users have pointed out.
So where else would we implement such a thing? I mean, maybe authentication in the Google Play Store. Does Android allow for that kind of customization of authentication, or no? I mean, I imagine if any OS did, it probably would be Android.
It would be Android.
Yeah.
So.
I wish we had Joe Leva to shed some light on this one. I'm sure we'll talk about this some more.
They could put it where the home button is.
Well, where's the home button on the One Max, though? It's like So, all right. So we've talked enough about fingerprints, but maybe that thing isn't even a fingerprint scanner. Maybe it is the biggest flash to ever grace a smartphone.
I was about to say, it could be a xenon flash.
No, because there's also a dot next just to the left of it, which looks like a flash.
But the Lumia 1020 has an LED flash and a xenon flash. So.
Sure
that's true.
Sure does. You can do both.
Now, one question. Do any of you believe that the reason why we didn't get a One Max at IFA is because they wanted to see what Apple was going to launch?
I mean,
when it comes to fingerprint technology, that would make sense.
Well, HTC likes doing their own thing. Like, Samsung does too, but they've also launched all of the notes at IFA, so that's kind of a tradition for them. As long as I've been covering this stuff, which isn't very long, HTC has not really been a huge presence at IFA. I mean, they kind of launched their mid-range stuff there, So, no, I didn't really expect it.
That's a good point.
Not to mention the One Max. I mean, it's been in development for 12 months or so. I mean, this is not like a brand new thing that they just decided to toss out. And but wait, let's see what Apple does. And if Apple does something similar, we're going to scrap it.
Exactly,
I
right?
don't think so.
They're way too late in the game. If this thing is real, they're way too late in the game to change anything.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Mobile device development is not nearly as nimble as people like to think that it is.
Right.
So I mean, it's not like Samsung is gonna, now that they've seen the iPhone announcement, now we're gonna go and we're gonna get to the drawing board and we're gonna start designing the S5. They probably already have cocktail napkins with the S6 already sketched on it. So.
Right. Yeah. No, it's fast. Actually, I got some insight into that in my first ever event that I covered remotely, which was the Galaxy S3 launch, and we were talking to a lot of people inside Samsung, and that was wonderful. And I really got some nice insight into how far in advance that stuff is planned. Like these guys were saying, we got the S3 out the door in phase 1 of 4 or whatever. That moved on from our department, and we immediately turned to our next project. And they wouldn't say at that point what their next project was, but it turned out to be the Note 2. And, that was, far in advance. So, anyway, the One Max, before we move on to the other HTC device, concerns me, gents. And it is concerning to me because it doesn't seem to... Listen, we know nothing about the software, but there's no hardware support for anything other than a phone.
A big display.
Right. What I'm saying is, why is this thing so big? It has to. I think the software has to carry this. I guess what I'm saying is there's no S Pen analog.
No.
There's no stylus.
Okay.
And
so it's just a giant screen for a giant screen's sake.
Right. And so, which means that the software will have to carry this entirely. And this is not the last time on this podcast we will make this point, because there's another big screen phone we have to talk about in a second. But so, what do you guys think? This will be the first super huge HTC screen we've seen. How do we think that they're going to take advantage of this extra real estate? I mean, besides smaller tiles and blink feed,
I would hope that they would do an Galaxy Note 3 type of implementation of like a side-by-side app usage, some type of multitasking capability. I mean, I don't have an HTC One, so I'm not even sure what their multitasking capability is on the One, aside from what I've read. I haven't.
Yeah, there's really not much there as far
I haven't seen anything.
Window in window. Yeah, no.
No.
But that's because it has a 4.7-inch screen. I mean, it's not a 5.3 or 5.5.
I mean, isn't it just time to make a big A phone just because everybody wants a big A phone at this point? So I'm using Michael's swearing strategy there.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So
well, it's not new. I mean, we've got the Galaxy Mega.
Right.
And nobody cares about these things. The problem is the only reason why the Note makes sense is because, call it gimmicky or whatever you want to call it, the S Pen lures people. It gives it a reason for being.
But
it gives it a reason.
And it's not just the S Pen. I mean, it's also the multitasking approach, which is very intelligent.
Right, but it's just funny. I have two friends that have a Note 2, and they had no clue that thing had that multi-screen.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say they had no clue it had an S Pen. I'm like, are you serious?
No, they bought it just for the S Pen,
kidding.
They bought it just for the S Pen, and it was funny. I sat down with the guys and listen, just press and hold the back button. He's like, "Oh my God!"
Hey, I wish the S3 had an S Pen. So I mean, I would buy just about any phone.
You can just buy the C Pen, bro. It's
come on,
the same thing.
Come on. Our listeners are going to believe you, and they're going to go out and do that.
Don't buy that C Pen. I want to have a special episode of Worst Gadgets Ever just for the C Pen. God, I hated that thing. So the HTC One Max, we'll see if it can differentiate itself. We got to keep moving here because we do have so much news, and the show's getting longer every minute. The big phone coverage continues with the LG G2, which I have sitting next to me. And you know what I have sitting next to that, guys?
Another LG G2.
Yeah, another LG G2 is correct. And do you guys know what's next to that?
Another LG G2.
LG is hilarious. So the reason we were late on the G2, guys, is because we had an address problem. This was supposed to go to Taylor while I was at IFA, and instead it came to me in Boston at my office. And unfortunately, what happened there was I wasn't here. So it sat at my office, unloved and untouched by anyone for the entire time I was at IFA. I came home, and I got off the plane, and I'm like, God, why isn't Taylor's G2 review up yet? What's going on with this? And then I found out what was going on with that. So that's why our G2 review is late. But then LG did something funny. the next day, after I'd unboxed the G2, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start getting to know the G2. My doorbell rang, and I went downstairs to my office, from my office, and I came back upstairs with a bag containing 2 more LG G2s. So
they sent. Not only did they send you the one you weren't supposed to get, but they sent you 2 more just in case.
Exactly. So it's pretty cool, and I don't mean to seem like it's a stupid thing. I mean, it's great. We get to experience both flavors. We've done the double unboxing. We've shown you what the differences are. Key among them, the global unlocked version comes with these awesome headphones, and the carrier's variants do not. And that's just
sad panda.
That's just really mean to do on a flagship class device. If you're going to take headphones out of a mid-ranger, fine. If you're going to take headphones out of a like banner Halo smartphone, that's just, I don't know, man. How much money could they possibly be saving? Yeah, I understand they don't want to pass that cost on to the consumer because they don't want to break the $199 price point or whatever it is. But geez. Anyway, point is, I've got one. We compared it to the HTC One. We are very excited to get. One of them is going to Jaime.
Yeah.
One of them is going to Taylor Martin. He's going to compare it against the Galaxy S4. And our review will be up next week. And guys, I got to tell you, Jaime, I'm looking forward to trading notes with you on this because I didn't like this thing in New York. I will say that. I covered the launch event. Commenters, many LG fans didn't like that I covered the launch event because I didn't really give the thing any slack. I mean, it feels like a Galaxy S3 in the hand, and I don't really like that. But you get it away from the tethers in the showroom, and you spend some time with it, you move into it, and does the thing have flaws? Yes, it has many. But it also has a lot of advantages, and I like it. I mean, this is a little spoilery. I have no idea how I'm going to feel about it once I actually sit down to write the review, but I am very surprised at how well I'm enjoying my time with this thing.
Well, you like the Optimus G. You were actually surprised about that phone. I remember when I was editing your review, and you were like, "I like this phone." LG has taken. They're not only doing a lot of wow with their UI and everything, but they actually got it right. It's not laggy. It's not.
Exactly.
It looks elegant.
Well, so the Optimus, the reason the reason that I didn't like the G2 so much, the reason I gave it such bunk in New York City was because of the Optimus G. The Optimus G was beautiful. It was glass. Yes, it was fragile, but it was glass and fake metal, which actually felt good, and it was just a gorgeous little device. And the G2 is a rebadged Samsung Galaxy S4, except with different detailing, a much thinner bezel, yes, and then the keys and stuff like that. But I'm talking about the material. It's a plastic big phone, and no one has asked me about it. I use this as a bit of a barometer because every one of my friends knows what I do. So when I go to hang out with them, they always know I'm carrying a new phone. I sat with my phone nerd friend at a bar the other day, and I put the thing on the counter in front of me. And it sat there for like 20 minutes before, and I had to point it out to him. That's how, that's how much this device doesn't stand out.
Yeah.
Hey, new phone here.
Yeah.
Look down.
Come on, praise me. Praise me.
Right.
Look at me. Come on.
Whereas with the Optimus G, that was not the case. I mean, the Optimus G was understated too, but I guess the point is I'm disappointed LG retreated from a bolder track to make it conform, to make the newer phone conform more with the landscape. But we've all heard that before. It's, wait for the full review for my full thoughts on that. But that does directly impact how excited we are about the Nexus 5. How excited are we about the Nexus 5, which may have been spotted at the FCC?
I've been saying it on Pocketnow Daily for like 3 days straight. If that thing is going to have all the specs that are at the FCC, oh man. And they keep the price tag. This is gonna make like the Nexus brand go ballistic. This reminds me of what the HTC, which was the Nexus One, was. Back then the Nexus One was the first 1 gigahertz processor. It was a lot of firsts in the case of that phone, and it sadly hasn't been the same case with every other phone that's been launched. And so this is not going to be a first phone, but at least it's not going to be a punching bag.
Tell us about the specs. What are the specs? Snapdragon 800.
Snapdragon 800, 2 gigs of RAM. The camera is apparently optical image stabilization, which
Sure. If that's the same module as in the G2, that would make sense.
Apparently, this is a G2 that's just rebranded in every way, whereas in the case of the Nexus 4, not everything was.
Right, and the Nexus 4 was, we won't go back to talking about the Nexus 4, but it was a underwhelming, not only on the spec sheet, but also in performance in a lot of different ways.
I remember how much people just went crazy over the fact that it didn't have LTE, and this one doesn't have just LTE. This GSM unit has all the bands.
Does it?
Yeah.
This FCC device?
Yeah.
And it also looks to have a matte back cover. Am I looking at that correctly?
Yeah. Okay. Listen, this is like looking at a Nexus 7 smaller.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys... You won't remember this, Jaime, but Adam Dowd, were you ever on Sprint?
I've never been on Sprint. I've been on AT&T longer than God.
All right. So Sprint, maybe like one or two of our listeners will remember. Sprint had a device, a flip phone.
And only one or two of our listeners.
That's exactly right. Sprint had a device called the SPH M610 from Samsung. It was a flip phone back in the day.
How do you remember those names, man?
I used to work for him, so but I was a big Samsung fan. And anyway, it was a flip phone. But the point is, it looked like when it was closed, it was the thinnest flip phone in America. It might still be one of the thinnest ever produced. I mean, it was stupid, ridiculously thin. And I loved it. I never owned it, but I loved it. But it had this soft touch black finish on it, and the phone had gently rounded curves when it was closed, but it was high end, so it wasn't rounded in the way that like a jitterbug is or something. But man, it was beautiful, and that's what this thing reminds me of, the Nexus 5 FCC photos. So if you have a chance, listeners, check out the link. The FCC's taken the photos down, I believe. They were bundled into like the Verizon G2 release, right?
Yeah. So the problem is that the paperwork was mixed within the same area, the same portion of the website. So both files were at the same area, but it was actually two different units.
Okay.
It was actually two different phones. I feel that this could finally be like the big break for the Nexus brand. It's not like if they're actually looking forward to it. Google's never been the company
they don't
they don't care about that. But this is Sundar Pichai's Android now.
True.
We are no longer in Andy Rubin's territory. So there's the guy that brought us the Chromebook Pixel. He's crazy. He got us a $35. He got us a $35 Chromecast. So
right.
if
and a
$1,300
netbook.
If I had any doubts that I had any single sort of admiration for Sundar after I paid those $35 for the Chromecast, buddy, you are my friend. I have a lot of admiration for you. That requires guts. And if he can give us a Snapdragon 800 LG Nexus 5, that calls guts, and that is going to go. Man, listen, the prices on smartphones have not dropped in a long time. Technology has become cheaper. Technology has become more accessible. And if this guy challenges the market with a very affordable flagship phone, this is going to make everybody's price drop if they can figure out a way to market it well.
I think I know exactly who to have on the podcast when this thing drops. You excited, Jaime? I like it.
I am.
Jaime Rivera, excited about it.
I'm sorry. I fell in love with the Nexus One.
Yeah.
And I've hated that every other Nexus has not been as great as the Nexus One.
I liked the Nexus S. I think the Nexus S got too much hate. I love the design of that thing. Put a curved screen on anything, I'm going to like it.
I'd giggle like a schoolgirl if this came out as the Google Nexus 5S.
Why don't you guys say schoolboy? Why are you guys like schoolgirl?
I don't know. It's an old expression. I felt like a 70-year-old when I used it earlier today on Twitter, and I still feel gross about it. Let's move on because we got to keep the pace up, and we want to talk about another big phone. Before we leave Android, I want to say we skipped a topic. Listen, HTC is probably going to release a Gold 1.
Yay.
Hooray. Okay.
Let's move on.
Yes.
Does it come with a big fat chain?
By the way, Brandon was in our conversation yesterday was like, man, I'm getting that golden iPhone. And I'm like, once you go outside and you notice that every single girl at the mall has the golden iPhone, you're going to want to return that thing.
Yeah, that's definitely
Or I mean, are you going to take your walker and walk up to the counter with it and say, "Give me a gold iPhone. I wanted the new hotness." I don't know, man.
I've said it before, but
iPhones.
we already talked about my time at Sprint. But before then, I worked for Nextel before we got acquired. And in 2004, the bronze edition Motorola i830 was released, and it was released in silver later, but it came out in bronze first. And I was like, man, there's just no way. I love this little tiny thing, but there's no way I'm buying it in bronze.
You remember that? You remember that Dolce and Gabbana V3?
Yes. Oh my God, my friend had one of those for like years. I would always see him at a bar, and I'm like, oh, there's Mike talking on his D&G Razor. Well,
so it's a he.
Yeah. He appreciated the finer things.
Unless it's actually made of gold, no, thank you.
Yeah, even then it's gross. Anyway, let's move on.
All right.
Another big phone in the Windows Phone camp. Finally, Adam Dowd gets to sink his teeth into something. Brandon Miniman, speaking of him, never mind, Adam, that was a different segue. Brandon Miniman asked me on the phone earlier, what do you think about that Nokia Lumia 1520? And I said, well, I think it's probably going to come out September 26th at a Nokia event in New York City. But personally, what do I think about it? I have no idea what to think about it.
At a Microsoft event, you mean?
Oh, when we're going to talk about that?
Sorry.
Oh, well, not yet.
We had to bring it up.
That
Real
is
on the
still
road,
in the future. That is still that has not happened yet. We still have Nokia in its traditional configuration.
Right. They don't even have a CEO anymore. Come on.
They do too. They have an interim CEO.
Yeah, but he's in charge of the other departments. He's not in charge of.
All right.
Okay. Anyway, Nokia event 26. Go.
The Lumia 1520 has exciting things about it. It looks to be Windows Phone's first true phablet. With a 6-inch screen at least, right? Or maybe is it 6 on the mark? Not as exciting as the resolution though. 6-inch, but 1080p, which would be a first for Windows Phone, and that would require the GDR3 update because the current iteration of Windows Phone does not support 1080p. So that's exciting. Being able to fit more live tiles in the same space is exciting because I am so tired of scrolling down to the second half of my home screen to see all my tiles, even when they're all small. And a giant battery, also exciting. Less exciting, I don't know what the hell to make of Windows Phone on a 6-inch screen. Adam, help me develop an opinion.
Of any phone.
No, I know what to do with it on other platforms, but not on Windows Phone. I don't know what to do. Adam, what are your thoughts? I need an opinion.
Well,
I'm at sea.
I wrote while you were across the pond. I wrote an article called, and actually the day that Microsoft announced their Nokia deal at like 3:00 in the morning on a Tuesday last week.
They were so proud of it.
I remember
and
that.
at 7:00 that next morning, I posted an article that said, if Nokia wants to make a phablet, go ahead, but I'm not interested. And I'm just like, do I need to change the headline now? Because it was just like, it's one of those things. It was like scheduled to go out. It was in the hopper at midnight.
Right. I remember that.
Anyway, so I will reiterate, if they want to make a phablet, go ahead. I'm not particularly interested. I don't need that third column of live tiles. I'm kind of like the anti-Michael, I guess, in that particular camp. I just think I honestly think it's going to make Windows Phone too busy. So I think it's going to be too much information trying to update all at the same time, and I'm not into it. 1080p is awesome. Don't get me wrong, but just the extra tiles and the extra rows, I think it's just going to make the screen too busy. I'm not going to be able to reach the tiles in the left-hand column with my thumb, so that's going to be annoying. It's going to almost require two-handed use. So homie's not playing that. So,
Jaime, what do you think? I mean, is this a good move for Windows Phone, a bad one?
Can you please get Taylor Martin on the phone and just ask him what he thinks about 6-inch phones?
No.
I mean, seriously, for example, in the case of Windows Phone, it's not like in the case of Android, for example, where probably one of the things that I loved about the Xperia ZL is how they fit a 5-inch display in that chassis. But the reason why that was possible was because these were soft keys, These are software buttons, not hardware buttons. So imagine Windows Phone with its mandatory 3 buttons at the bottom, plus a 6-inch display, plus the chassis, how big is that thing going to be?
It's going to be a monster. I mean, it's going to be a big old...
It's going to be a monster. And I'm like, what is the value behind the phone that big?
Well, we are getting word that from this source, and this is via WP Central, by the way, that the 1520 is really thin, but it has some weight to it. So no surprise to have a weighty device coming out of Nokia. But
and
really
a gigantic battery. So.
Right, and well, that is true. We have to talk about that because one of the things that going big allows you to do is to throw a huge battery in there. And I love Steven's headlines. Nokia Lumia 1520 tipped to have a big old battery. And yeah, we're looking at 3,400 milliamp hours according to the rumor, and that's massive, dudes. I mean, that's bigger than the Note. That's bigger than the G2 here.
And in the case of Windows Phone, I mean, Windows Phone has been using like the smallest batteries in the market. They just don't need a big battery.
That's true. So that could be pretty compelling.
Yeah.
Now, you have to factor in the 1080p display, of course.
Right.
Most likely a quad-core processor. If this is a
This was rumored at what is it? Snapdragon 800 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. And that's exciting to me because, by the way, my first experience with the Snapdragon 800 has been this G2, and this thing sips battery life. It does not gulp it down.
Nice.
So that's nice. So, okay, on the one hand, Nokia has to, or Windows Phone has to compete at the phablet size category. If they ignore that sector, that's stupid. They shouldn't do that, right?
But, and as my article pointed out, that's why I said go ahead and make it. There's a market for it. People want big screens. People want,
especially
people want to have.
Because live tiles, if you can fit more on the screen, then you can know more without having to do it. It fulfills the glanceable info promise that Windows Phone was built to fulfill.
Right. I mean, not me, but sure. Yes, somebody wants it.
So I think they should play here. I just hope. I think my hope is the same as it is for the HTC One Max. I hope they find a way to make the most intelligent use of that added space, not just throw a big screen on there because they can, like we see in other Android phones.
They're not Samsung. I mean, come on.
Oh, man.
Samsung's the exact wrong example because they're the ones who leveraged that.
No,
or are you talking about the Mega?
I'm talking about the Galaxy Mega.
Oh, yeah. Let's forget the Galaxy Mega.
I just had the weirdest image in my head right now of 3 columns of tiles. And when I talk about 3 columns, I'm talking about the 3 mid-size, tiles. I'm not talking about the tiny tiles. Obviously, though, you get 6 of those, but when I'm picturing 3 columns and like a slot machine, like each one independently moving of the other ones, so that if you have your weather in the right column, you can move just that one up, and you could still see your email on the left hand side.
Yeah, versatility is good,
right?
And whatever enhancements GDR3 brings to the table will be nice.
If these guys figure out how to make split screen on Windows Phone, that would be amazing. But I don't know.
Well, and maybe there will, because we see that in RT. I never use it.
Windows 8.
Oh yes, you have the snap feature.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
That would be smart.
Oh snap!
And we've heard rumors of Windows RT merging with Windows Phone 8.
We have, and they
and listen, I mean, I'm like, I remember when I read the rumors and I was building the script for the daily. I was like, what took these guys so long? I was like, why? If they would have simply figured out, if they would have simply made both operating systems the same, it would allow those gigantic amounts of applications on Windows Phone to work on Windows RT. It would have saved the platform.
Yeah, I don't know. Every time we get close to talking about RT, I just feel worse.
Well, why don't we? I mean, we've got the Nokia Sirius to talk about as well. I mean, come on.
Wait, did you? So you haven't been looking at your Skype feed, have you?
I was about to say Jaime has not been reading Skype, the messenger.
Either Jaime is ignorant of my last message, or he is just trolling.
I'm trolling.
Good. Yeah, Nokia's apparently making a tablet, and
let's move on.
That's exciting. Anyway, speaking of Nokia...
Moving on.
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned it, we should note that we have a lot to talk about with regard to Nokia's tablet. Do you guys think that will be released on the 26th? Or, excuse me, announced on the 26th? Or are we still too far away from a possible release for that? Very briefly.
Come on. Microsoft launches things. They announce things today and launch them a year from now. Why not?
Well, because it's still not Microsoft.
Why not?
let's get to I don't know. You listeners, you can click the link there. I think that I need like a whole 2 hours before a podcast to actually put my thoughts together on what a Windows RT tablet from Nokia, soon to be Microsoft's hardware division, means. Because I don't know what it means. I know that Windows RT is something I don't really ever want to use.
Yeah,
I know that if they take the best of Windows RT and the best of Windows Phone and put them together into something, I think there is real potential for something cool there. Absolutely.
Exactly.
But I don't know what complexities that would entail.
Just with that Snap feature, imagine running, games or specific applications from the phone on your tablet and having those work as well on your phone and, backwards. I mean, that's really what they needed for RT to survive. And if Nokia could add their bevy of applications from the phone to work on the tablet, that would make it really compelling.
Yeah,
I get. I hate to sound like Taylor Martin, but I actually wrote an article about this. What does Nokia? What would a Nokia tablet offer? I don't see it. I mean, what Nokia really brings to the table right now is useful for phones. Their maps, their camera, their their here services and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any of those being really all that useful on a tablet. So I don't know why they would bother. And not to mention, they have Surface now. So
okay, fine, Adam. I will stop defending your platform. Let's move on.
All right. Thank you. Would you please get back in your own camp?
Well, we're going to get back into the... I have a feeling that we're going to get back into the Windows 8 versus Windows RT discussion very, very shortly because we have a rumored Surface 2 event. Actually, I'm sorry, it's not rumored. It's confirmed. We're just not going to it. But we will be covering it remotely. I don't know if we'll do a live blog or whatever, but let's see. Microsoft developing Cortana as its new voice assistant. This is cool. Let's end up the Windows Phone category, jump into listener mail, and then we'll have a weekend to ourselves. Guys,
can we call that thing Cort or Anna, not Cortana?
Why?
Cort.
Just imagine, Cortana, what's the weather like?
I mean, I don't think you're going to have to do that, but you get the reference, right, Jaime?
I have no idea. Oh, in Halo?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. I know it's
gamer.
Halo. I mean, come on. I know it's Halo.
We have to make this clear. Let's lay the foundation for our listeners here. Okay. Microsoft's Windows Phone 8 has a lot going for it. One of those things is not its voice interface, if you ask me. I think it is the worst voice interface I've ever encountered. It's certainly the worst text transcription I've ever used.
Really?
I hate it. Yeah, because I use Google's services all the time, and I really love how they work in terms of voice interface with Google.
You ever used S-Voice?
Oh, my God, I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
No, hold on.
I feel vindicated now.
Okay, I reflexively retreated from my position because I wanted to be nice to both you and Windows Phone. But no, I'm going to say this on the air, and I don't care if you call me crazy. S-Voice is still better than Windows Phone's voice interface.
You're crazy.
I know. But it's true. And I hate S-Voice. I think S-Voice... And listen, we're not going to talk about S-Voice. All we're saying is that you can disagree in the comments if you like, listeners. Guys, we can fight about this in the playground after school, but it's horrible as it is right now. So the fact that Microsoft is building a better voice interface excites me to no end. The fact that they were smart enough to codename it after one of their own properties, and Cortana, if you never played Halo, Cortana is the computer voice inside your head, right? It's it's the ship, it's the lady, she's attractive. Guys, help me.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. I'm not a gamer, so you lost me.
Neither am I. But Halo is like the only game I've played.
I just wish, that we don't have to call that thing like Cortana. What's the weather?
I want to do that. I think that would be exciting.
It'd be like, can I call you Anna?
Right. But you know what? Probably there's going to be a new way to address it. There seem to be some rules. We had a bevy of leaked screenshots emerge. This was from Phone Arena, it looks like. Or excuse me, this was via Phone Arena. Original source is ZDNet and The Verge. Screenshots indicating polling intervals with particular contexts, particular contacts you can call, weather alerts, calendar nightly sync, all this kind of stuff that seems to point directly to a more robust voice interface, which is only codenamed Cortana. I'm sure that won't make it to production, which makes me sad. But I just wanted to throw it in here and say I'm very excited about it. It's one of Windows Phone's pain points for me. I know Adam Lane would also disagree, by the way. Adam, you have somebody else in your camp.
No, Adam loves it. He actually... Go ahead.
I call it Baby Siri. So, and now don't get me wrong. I have sent text messages to people deliberately, like really wrong text messages, just because they were so funny with what they came up. And so I would transcribe something saying, I'll be there in 20 minutes, and it'll come back with, I'll grow hair for 5 fins or something like that, and I'll send that, and then I'll follow it up with another text message saying, sorry, I had to send.
And you know what? And listen, Google has those moments. Siri has those moments. They all have their bad days, but with Windows Phone, the functionality is so limited. Like with the fact that you can't pronounce punctuation, there's a whole lot you can't do with it, and that's really annoying.
Although the one thing that really impressed me, just a little anecdote here, when Rich Dunbar, he's a Nokia developer ambassador, he came to Chicago once to put on a workshop for us, and we were communicating via text at one point, and so he sent me a text back that NP, and Baby Siri actually read it aloud as no problem, and I'm like, that's so impressed me.
See, that's nice. Now, meanwhile,
okay.
I have my LG G2 set to tell me who's calling by voice, and so the phone rang. It was Brandon before, and she's like, "New phone call from Brandon Miniman, 610,348,100." And I'm like, "Wait, what are you doing?" And I realized she was reading the phone number as an integer. I was like, "You've got to be kidding me." How does that get past the final quality checks? Anyway,
that's outstanding.
So voice interface still has a long way to go, guys. Let's close up our main part of the podcast and move on to listener mail.
Bong bong.
Very nice indeed. This is the first piece of listener mail is going to come from Martin Florin, and since I have done the speaking for a little while, why doesn't our own Adam Dowd read this one aloud?
Oh. I should have been logged into the email?
No, you shouldn't. It's in the rundown. It's at the bottom of the rundown.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay, let me get in there.
Yeah.
Hang on, okay. Windows Phone. Hi, guys. Or actually, it's hey, guys. Sorry, Martin. Hey, guys. I think that the new iPhone 5C is just an opportunity for Apple to sell a low-quality iPhone 5 with lower production costs and get higher margins. That's okay for me because I'm not buying one. Alrighty then. But what I cannot understand is why nobody is talking about the bad design of the cases. The non-cutout is laughable. What is your opinion on this? Greetings, Martin. Gesent mit meinem Nexus 7.
Oh, that's meinem Nexus 7. Sent with Nexus 7. Yes, indeed. Martin,
auf Deutsch.
From the country I just returned from. So Martin is referring to the case that goes around the iPhone 5C that makes it look like a croc. A shoe, with the holes that let the bottom, the phone casing color shine through the case color.
Yeah, just for some context for our listeners, if you haven't watched the live hangout of the Apple event, near the end, Taylor Martin, it's gold. So,
yeah, it's brilliant.
Okay.
So a lot of people have been talking about this, and I think Apple achieved something interesting. Not that they needed more buzz, but I think it's always cool when a company makes a bold choice that not everyone is going to like, clearly. I tend to like it because I like dual-tone colors, but I can understand where people are coming from, where it looks like, oh yeah, the iPhone 5C is for iPhone 5 cheese grater. And it's like, I get that. It kind of looks like it's wearing a polka dot dress, or it looks like a water filter, or, whatever. So, I don't know. Guys, what do you think about the aesthetics of the casing design?
I'm surprised that have you noticed that the holes cover part of the iPhone name at the back?
Yeah, so it's like iPon.
I look at that and I'm like, how did this cross quality control?
Yeah.
Because Steve Jobs isn't around anymore?
I am serious. I just looked at that and I'm like, man, what would have Steve said? He would have been like, he would have had a hairball. It's like,
rolling
come on,
around in his grave right now.
Maybe, maybe that could have been a big old bubble there.
I guess I would have liked the whole concept of the cases if they would have brought more patterns than just little dots. More than just a crock phone.
Oh, but the circles play nicely with the new iOS 7 interface elements. with the circular buttons, the circular signal strength, the dots.
Yeah, true, fine. I guess, it would have been cool if, like, the blue case would have been, squares, and, the other one would have been triangles, and I don't know.
God,
it's
I
just,
think that would have been so heinous. It was like a mall kiosk,
I'm kidding. I guess I've never been a case guy. And so I don't know. I don't really like it. It's like, for example, I've seen other cases, like for the Galaxy S4, for example, where the whole text Samsung and Galaxy S4 is well printed on the back, and so even the iPhone 5S case has Apple and everything well printed on the back. So I don't know. It looks kind of cheesy, but I'd love to actually hold it before I get an opinion about it. I don't like that iPhone text being covered. That I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's pretty ugly. And I think we've already kind of discussed the whole low quality iPhone 5 thing earlier in the podcast.
We talked over it a little bit. Yeah.
But the case is pretty. I mean, I guess it's okay, but it's pretty.
One thing I will take issue with Martin's characterization of the current state of the dialogue, though, because I cannot understand why nobody is talking about the bad design of the cases. Martin, you look hard enough. Plenty of people are talking about those cases. I am so tired of my Twitter feed being loaded up with people making fun of this thing. I think it could have looked better. I don't think it looks as bad as people are making it out to be. I think people are looking for things to hate about the 5C, and they're finding it in a bold design that, not everyone has to like it. And you know what? There's a thing, there's a good point being made that those exposed parts of the iPhone casing, it stand a very good chance of staining or fading or doing whatever as a result of dirt or exposure to whatever. So it will be interesting to see in about 2 years how many iPhone 5Cs look like they have a polka dot pattern screen printed on them.
And then once you take the case off, then it won't say phone. It'll say I knee.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, by the way, that is a very good point, Michael. For those of you that own the iPhone 3GS, I guess the reason why I became such a case hater was because whenever you would put a case on that phone, the lint around the case would become stuck to the glossy plastic.
I remember that. Yeah.
Okay, so I would definitely not use that iPhone 5C with a case.
Well, which would be great, and normally I would agree with you because I'm not a case guy either, but in this case, the case, if you get it in a different color, it enhances the appeal of the phone, or it actually just makes the phone more your own, which is the whole idea.
I guess so. I guess the point being is, sadly, I don't know if that polycarbonate is got. Hey, even my HTC One X has. I actually got a case for it because I lent it to a friend of mine for a couple of days, and I just I gave him the phone with a case, and when he gave it back to me, the phone looked intact, but the whole back has all these marks from the lint, and I can't clean it off.
All right,
I cannot wipe it off.
Of course, the One X is matte polycarbonate, and this is glossy. So we'll have to see how it goes.
I had the same problem with the 3GS,
Oh, right, that's right.
Yeah,
right.
So I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean,
according to Apple, it has this special coating. So let's just see.
Why don't we stick with case discussion? And Jaime, why don't you read the short one here from our friend Jace Croson?
Okay, so hey, Pocketnow, I have a question regarding the iPhone 5S cases. How do you think the big cases like LifeProof and OtterBox are going to make their cases cover the front of the phone and still have the Touch ID work? Really curious to how they would do this. Thanks. Oh, Jace, thank you for asking the same question I've been asking myself.
This is a really cool question, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Jace, by the way, I am a LifeProof user, and the reason why is because I use the iPhone for running and I sweat like a pig. So it is really easy for me to soak the phone, and that's the reason why I use that special case. And yes, I've been asking myself the same question. The thing is, you don't really, to my knowledge, Touch ID is something that you can turn off. And to my understanding, what you'll most likely have to do, because there's just no way to insulate that special portion of the button, because the button on itself is definitely non-permeable, meaning you can definitely get the phone's internals wet through the button. Right. So, now the good thing about the LifeProof Fre is that it's got this like little box this like little plastic that actually does the home button pressing. So most likely you will just have to disable Touch ID while you use the case. And if you use it permanently because that's the way you like to protect your phone, then you'll most likely have to compromise and not use Touch ID.
That sounds like the most likely explanation to me as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Because I was going to say the current boxes, they just have the button that kind of hovers over, and you push that button to push the other button.
Exactly.
Now, one thing is, for example, the Touch ID is a capacitive sensor. So if LifeProof would make that casing transparent, because it actually sort of like takes a photo of your fingerprint. I don't know how the chrome ring would detect the heat, but then again, the plastic over is able to detect your finger as you touch the display. So it would be really interesting if the engineers would figure out a way to make that whole casing transparent and give it a try. Most likely they will, and bring just another version of LifeProof for the 5S and have Touch ID work that way. But most likely, your current case, you'll have to compromise and just switch it off. The good thing is your current case is still usable with the 5S.
Yes, but what case will you have to put on it to make it work with gloves? So, I'm sorry. I'm trolling. I'm just trolls got a troll. That's all right.
Adam, I was like 500 milliseconds late on my laugh on that, and it's because I'm sitting here, I'm all bummed out. You guys are talking about these cool things like fingerprint scanners. My 5C is not going to have them. I'm really, really bummed out about that. I wish that was on the 5C as well.
You're the one that ordered the 5C.
I like colors. Colors. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Had gold.
And you don't like gold? Come on,
man. I know. This is my problem. Let's. Thanks for the email there, Russell. Let's move on to Christopher. Thanks for the email there, Jace. Let's move on to Russell's email. Guys, I want to know your thoughts on how Apple is going to manage the changes to iOS 7 for the general consumer. I don't think general consumer knows what's coming, and I'm not sure how they're going to react. Are people going to see this update for their device come through and install it and just be hit with all the changes? Or will Apple roll out iOS 7 is coming info emails ahead of time to help ease and ready them? Christopher Drummer. This is a cool question.
Yeah,
this is Russell Fletcher. Sorry.
Yeah,
Jeez.
Apple always does this. They always send an email the same day that the update comes, and they'll give you links to go learn more about the operating system. They always do that. They even do it. They even do that for us developers, because I have a developer account. And in the case. I know. I guess, probably the cool thing about iOS for, the general user, the general consumer, is that, well, it's just aesthetically different. But overall, if you don't know that Control Center's there, you won't really miss it because you can still go to settings and just switch everything on and off.
What's so funny, my mother and father, I think, both of them still don't know that Notification Center is up there. Every time I come home to visit, I'm like, hey, swipe down from the top. And they're like, oh, what's all this? I'm like, okay, never mind. So, yeah, you're right. There's going to be a lot of features that just kind of ride under the level of awareness.
Show me that on your Lumia 1020, your mom would say.
Ooh.
Oh, no, he didn't.
Sick burn.
I'm going to fly to Honduras just so I can slap you, boy.
I think
I've got friends at the airport. Trust me, they can take
I bet you do.
Oh, dear God. All right. So before we get into that, thank you. That was a good question, Russell. Thank you. And let's finish out with Adam Dowd reading Christopher Drummer's mail about Windows Phone.
When Windows Phone was first announced, many were put off by the limitations OEMs were restricted to. Microsoft obviously did this to ensure a consistent experience across devices, which in large has worked. But now we see OEMs, Nokia, have more freedom with the UI. Lumia devices are now able to change the default camera app or to Nokia Smart Camera Pro Cam. Do you think we will see more customization of Windows Phone, say HTC Blink Feed at start, or as an interactive lock screen, or Samsung's bevy of random features? Thanks for taking my mail, and I love what you all are doing. Christopher Drummer, sent from Windows Mail.
Yeah, and I will say this, Christopher, thank you for the email, and before, Adam, you lend your response, I will say this is already happening. Christopher, if you check out our review of the HTC 8XT for Sprint, pressing the camera button optionally can launch you into HTC's custom camera app. Samsung has the same thing. They have written their own camera app for Windows Phone on the Ativ S Neo, also for Sprint. And they have also started bundling in some lower-level stuff like Ativ Beam, which is a port of their Galaxy Beam feature. onto Windows Phone. So yeah, I think we are seeing the reins kind of relax around Windows Phone as time goes on.
Yeah, and on my Lumia, when I'm going back to geocaching again, because that's my second self. Yeah. Whenever I'm navigating to a cache, it'll ask me, do I want to navigate with Here Maps or with Google Maps? So, it asks me every time. I wish there was a way I could set it as a default. But
it's just interesting that you have the choice. Yeah,
just take your Galaxy S3, man. Just take your Galaxy S3. That's the way.
Well, I could, and I could talk for hours about the geocaching experience in the S3. But anyway. But it's fantastic. I'll just put it that way. But so I mean, there's definitely already some customizations going there. I'd like to see a little bit more. I'd like to see them borrow a page from Android's book where you can actually set those default, ask every time or make it permanent, that type of thing.
Right.
But I mean, for now, just the fact that we can do that is much better because I mean, on the Lumia 900, you're stuck with I think it's. The Bing Maps,
Bing stuff,
which is yuck.
So we've seen that. Yeah, we've seen flexibility be injected into the ecosystem, and I think that's nice because I think one of the things we've learned from Android is that yes, it's possible to overdo it with manufacturer customizations and skins, but it's also possible to go the other way.
Micromanaging.
Sure, but it's also possible to go the other way. It's also possible to be like, well, you can't do any customization. The only customization you can do is in hardware, so eat it. And that sucks.
And going back to the point that Christopher makes at the beginning when he's like, when Windows Phone was first announced, I remember that event like it was yesterday. I hated it. And many were put off by the limitations OEMs were restricted to. And, Microsoft made a compelling point. They were like, okay, so we are going to be the anti-Android, the anti-iPhone, but we're going to be our own thing that's a mix of the two. Because we're going to control the software, so therefore you won't have to wait for software updates. And then we have Mr. Dowd, who's still waiting for Aurora. And so I guess that, it made sense at the beginning. I'm just sad that it never really worked. I'm sad that it never really it made so much sense at the beginning for Microsoft to be like, we want to control the software for everybody to get timely updates, and they never pulled it off.
Right.
It's just sad. So it's great to see that OEMs are finally being like, you know what, Microsoft, you never figured that out with the carriers, so we're just going to do our own thing. I just wish they would do, more than just the camera button and things like that.
I will say this, man, even with those limited changes, the Ativa S and the 8XT were easily both my least favorite Windows phones to review ever because of the performance hit that Windows Phone took. Now, I'm not saying that it's definitively as a result of these software modifications. It may very well be an unoptimized Snapdragon 400 problem. It may be something else. But if it is because of the allowing these manufacturers to make those modifications, it's a really bad step because Windows Phone's one of its key differentiators, sorry to use the overused term, has been that it is really responsive no matter what hardware it's running on. And that just wasn't the case for either of those phones. So I don't know if it was Sprint, I don't know if it was the manufacturers, I don't know if it was Qualcomm.
I think it is really, because, I mean, I edited the review for the Lumia 521, that $100 Nokia from the Home Shopping Network.
Nice.
And, I looked at all the raw footage that Adam sent me, and, the phone looked like if it breezed through everything, and there was no customization here. Aside from the Nokia ones that we already know about, at least some of them, and some of the things were actually watered down for that specific phone, but the phone worked well. I mean, for $100, I was like, man, this is cheaper than a Go phone.
Yeah.
In some cases,
It's true. And there's a lot more to explore in that area, and I'm really looking forward to the next Windows Phone update, just in terms of broadening the platform's abilities and taking advantage of some of this new hardware we're seeing. So, I also want to thank Christopher, Russell, Jace, and Martin, and everyone else who wrote in this week, last week, and the week before. We're sorry to have waited so long to get back to listener mail, but a lot has been going on, as it usually is. And don't worry, guys, we're going to have another special edition listener mail, so maybe your 3-month-old mail will get read on one of these episodes. And even if it doesn't, though, we really want to let you know we appreciate you writing in, and we're sorry we can't always get to your mail, but we do love it, and we read every piece. So thank you.
Our next podcast is going to be, Dear Pocketnow team, what do you think about this new Siri feature that Apple's putting out?
Dear Pocketnow team, I've been considering the HTC Evo. What are your thoughts on this? Anyway.
I think that kickstand could really be a big thing.
It could really be a game changer. Well, I think, guys, that it's Friday afternoon, I've got to edit this thing, and then I'm introducing my girlfriend to Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan tonight, or reintroducing her to it. So I think, that's going to be exciting. What are you guys doing?
Date night, huh? Awesome.
Yeah. What about you, Adam?
Oh my God! I have absolutely killed myself coming up to this podcast. I haven't even brushed my hair yet today, so I think that's what I'm going to start with. But beyond that, I'm going to do a whole lot of nothing.
That sounds amazing. And Jaime?
Yes.
I've got the ATB to finish for the Galaxy S4.
Ooh, yes. Is that going up tonight?
Yeah, it's going to go up tonight, just probably a little late. It's been just crazy. We've had a lot of thunderstorms over the last couple of days, and it's been blowing the power from the area where I live at every single day. It's crazy.
Well, good luck with keeping the lights on over there. We've got some thunderstorms here too, but hopefully, if the power goes out and you get bored, use one of your many battery-powered devices and send me a text. Oh, God, I've got to go to FedEx to get you phones. Okay, we got to go. Guys, that is going to do it for this episode of The Weekly. Thank you for joining me, co-hosts, and you should find us on Twitter. Jaime_Rivera. Adam, @DeadTechnology. As always, I am @Captain2Phones. You can also follow Pocketnow officially at Pocketnow on Twitter, as Pocketnow on Instagram, Facebook, and Google+. And you can share opinions with other listeners online. Doesn't that sound fun? Forums.pocketnow.com. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes or Xbox Music, which helps us get discovered. And if you have a topic, question, or suggestion for the show, or you just want to say hi, you can email us. Please do. podcast@pocketnow.com. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.
And maybe the next time I'm on, I'll have Amber.
Is that the name of your wife, or what?
It most likely will be.
Oh, not anymore.